We're not live on anything. Um, and so if this conversation works out all right, I'll just put it on my YouTube channel. It's a small YouTube channel, but look, you never know if what you've got to say is important, as long as it's there for the records somewhere for someone to look at, and it might be important in a few years' time even. Then
Well,
that may be just what needs to be done and good enough.
well, sounds good to me. I'm
Good
just
man. Well,
trying to
listen,
help as many folks I can.
good. Well, first of all, what's your name? What should I call you? I was calling you Josh, but is that right?
Yes, like Josh was my given name. I was named after my ancestor that came over here from Britain, all that mess. But most people just call me Joe or JC.
All right. Well, I'll call you JC then, will I?
That'll work.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, well, my name's John, and my channel name is called Eternal Extrapolations, just because one thing always leads to another, and there's no end to the rabbit holes you can go down and the thinking from one thing to another. From one point that you establish, then it leads out like a star shape into so many other, it's like that Fibonacci sequence. But I
Yeah,
suppose what I'd
fractal.
like to, yeah, fractal, exactly, thank you. And I suppose what I'd like to hone in on is that the reason for this conversation, and I asked you if you would talk to me, and you're the first person, by the way, like don't think that this is like a formal interview. I'm doing air quotes in case anyone can't see me. I just thought, hey, listen, we could talk to each other in a live stream like we were. We were in the comments of a live stream a few days ago.
hmm
And you mentioned that you reckon that you are descended from one of these, can I say Illuminati bloodlines?
Uh, yeah, I mean it's funny. It goes into the history of how all this stuff got set up. My ancestor, Sir Jonathan Owen, was fighting for King Charles the First during the whole English Civil War issue, and during that time period, he sent my ancestor Joshua Owen and his wife and all that over here. That was in about 1650, something like that. And as time went on, our relationship to the crown got kind of further and further apart. And we ended up on the American side of the revolution. As you know, America was founded by Freemasons in the first place. It was a Freemasonic plot to really, it was the Freemasons who wanted this no crown. The mantra we had was down with throne and altar. The whole point is to bring down the crowns of the world and all the churches and bring them under one.
Yeah.
With the Masons at the top.
It's a funny thing.
Obviously.
I was gonna ask you, does that make them good or bad? But I don't know if anybody can answer that because, well, it depends on the time and it depends on their motivation. Because when you said it brings down the throne and the altar, or maybe the pulpit for something like that, because I see those two things as illegitimate control over people. But at the same time, I think what we've seen over the last couple of years, especially, or 3 years, I guess, is coming up to now, is that when you remove the constraints of religion and an authority figure who is in some way just, you have total chaos. And now we don't seem to be going anywhere good. What do you think about that?
Yes. Well, obviously, I've been Orthodox for some time now, and I'm going to argue from that point of view at this point. From the Orthodox point of view, a monarchy is a sacred thing. Kind of an as above, so below type deal. The hierarchy, from our point of view, the reason things are in chaos is because the world is meant to be structured a certain way. Heaven is structured a certain way. The world is supposed to be structured a certain way based on that. And how that is meant to be structured flows from the church itself. It flows from God to the church, to us. And the king is a representation of that authority, of the state authority. It's supposed to be church and state together balancing each other. 3 crowns, the church, state, and then God up here, the Godhead, it flows out just like any other Trinity. It flows out, and through all that, it flows to the people, into the family. And then, the family is what brings up the next generation. And this is the web that interconnects us to our past. Without that, it all comes apart. That's the glue that holds everything together. Before Christianity, the world was chaotic. Everybody believed this, that, and other thing. And, you had, raiders raiding this village and, taking girls from, I'm half Native American, so I have that too, And, we have the history of what things were like before the English came, before the Spanish came. And, this day and age, a lot of people get down on, the colonizer thing. But the truth is, like, under Aztec rule, for instance, Montezuma was kidnapping people, fattening them up, sacrificing, and then eating them in the name of the rain god. So yeah. It's one of those things that, like, a centralized authority, back to the main point, like, a centralized authority isn't in itself the bad thing. It goes back to Christian doctrine. Because of the fall, it's our corrupted nature, our corrupted hearts that cause these things to go badly. And a society tends to get the king that they deserve. If we're acting all debaucherous and not and not holding them in place, if we're just running around drinking, having sex, absorbed in our own little lives and things, and we're not involved and engaged in society and with each other, what impetus do these rulers have to behave themselves?
Yeah. Like you said there, the phrase also, the people get the government or the politicians that they deserve, the same as the king. And I have thought about that recently, that, we might look at people that are in current administrations in pretty much every Western society for sure, and ask ourselves, do they feel no shame? Why don't they do the right thing? And why aren't they feeling some sense of obligation to do right by the citizens? But what I've thought about is that we don't give them much incentive, because everybody else is only complaining because they're not in charge, and they would be as reckless and feckless and greedy and self-serving if only they were in charge. So yes. I think that's why the politicians feel no shame, because they know that they shouldn't need to care about the opinions of the people, because the people aren't any good.
Well, I don't think it's that they feel no shame. Like the Bohemian Grove and the cremation of care and all that right there, that very ceremony tells you that they feel shame. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to do the ritual. The ritual is there to remove their care, so that they are able to do these things without feeling anything about it.
Yeah. So they actually practice at making sure they get rid of any shame that they might have felt, or care that they might have felt.
Yes.
But tell me this, JC. Now, you mentioned Bohemian Grove there, and I certainly don't want to geolocate you too much, But you're probably, or you said you're not too far from there anyway. And this kind of reinvokes this idea of, like, whatever we should call them, the Illuminati and whatever. But before moving on to asking you about specifically what your inside track might be on them, I wanted to maybe see if you could get it a bit more clear as to, like, what were the motivations of the Freemasons? Because people might say now the Freemasons are bad, and then you're saying the church and the monarchy were good people ordained by God. So did they have just a sort of a jealous need to overthrow them because just they wanted to be in charge? Or were the church and monarchy corrupt? And did they were they virtuous, or were their intentions good, but it's turned out to be the law of unintended consequences taking over? Can you try and figure out what's going on there in that kind of contradiction?
It's because of the Masonic library, like, I've been able to find out a lot about the history of the Freemasons and how it came to be this way. Well, it goes way on back to the schism, and a little bit before that, when the church split in two. When the church split in two, that's when this whole idea of the Crusades was cooked up, right? And, you have to think of the church, the Rome's position at that point. Rome's been split in half, and the West is wanting to make its own mark. It's trying to say, like, we're the supreme. We're going to do what we're going to do. Like, we're going to go take Jerusalem and prove that we're the worthy church. We're the right one, because, they have this, the inferiority complex of the second son. You see it in the story of Cain and Abel, of Esau and Jacob. And, over and over and over throughout history, the second son is jealous of the first son. And because the Orthodox Church is the original church and Rome broke away from that, it gave them this inferiority complex. Not to mention they already had this empire building spirit within them in the first place. Something that they had once and then lost, Well, they send everybody off on the Crusades. The Templars go down there. Well, when the Templars get there, they encounter the very same belief system that Christ was fighting when he was here. When he was incarnated in physical form on this earth, he was railing against the Pharisees. The Pharisees, the money changers, and all this corruption that had been brought into the temple from the captivity and all these other kind of things throughout history that the Jews had picked up. We're all human. We're all corruptible. And if you read the Bible, you'll see the Jews continually, show that they're just like everybody else. They make mistakes. Just like we all do.
Maybe that'll get us.
Yeah. we all screw up. That's what we all have in common. And, we have very finite, short memories as a society, as a species, and it's just the way things are. But when they went down there, these Templars encountered this old Gnostic teaching. And they brought it back with them. And it kind of, and that's where you start getting the Cathars and all these other little sects popping up. The schism is one of those things that started a chain reaction to where the West started going off in its own way. And and as time went on, it just fractured more and more and more and more. And this, I don't know, you could call it a spirit. Almost that it enters into, certain people and certain groups and it drives them towards things. It's almost hard to explain. It's a supernatural thing that pulls you towards it when you're in that life. But I don't believe they started out with bad intentions. What they really wanted to do was like everybody else at that time. They wanted to get closer to God. And, they felt restricted, and they were trying to, branch out, and they had been poisoned by the descendants of the Pharisees, really, and it really just one thing led to another. And then you have in 1307, you have the big falling out with France. Well, because you have all this strife going on within the church already, and you have the struggle of power between Rome and France, because I don't know if you're aware, but the papacy actually in the West actually split in two at one point. You had the Avignon papacy, and then you had the papacy in Rome, and they were kind of going head to head. And and all this kind of these geopolitics thing, it would take hours and hours to explain it in depth, but. Yeah. Because of all these geopolitics and things, Rome kind of had to, on the surface, denounce the Templars. Well, when they denounced the Templars went to Scotland. They went to Scotland, and under Robert the Bruce had actually founded what we know as the Freemasonic order as a Templar retirement group, almost.
Right.
Somewhere for the heroes of the Crusades to come and enjoy the retirement and whatnot. And that's where the Scottish Rite comes from.
Okay.
The Scottish Rite and the Scottish Rite and the Templars, that's what was mainly what I belong to. But it's one of those things where every Templar is a Mason, but not every Mason is a Templar type deal.
Okay. Different sort of levels or different ways that you can ascend through, what do they call them? Not chapters or orders or something like that?
It depends on what group you're in, what they call it. There's orders, chapters, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really a system of rings within rings. Most people who go and apply to be a Freemason are not going to get beyond the porch Mason level. They're going to be basically frat boys who come and hang out, and, they talk about their wives, and, they just have fun, really. Mm-hmm. And then they do favors for each other occasionally. Now, where it starts to get different is you have people that are selected. Now, they will go for people whose families are in prominent positions of power in your town, in your city, and, just in government in general. The sheriff's office, the judges, the lawyers, the doctors, there's pretty much a Freemasonic lodge for everything. Especially professionals, military, law enforcement, medical staff, stuff like that. But the ones that are tapped get to go into the next ring, and then the next ring, and the next ring, based on what you're good at, as well as how useful you are, as well as who you are blood wise. There's a lot of things that go into it. You have to be voted in. But if you ever say you're a low ranking Mason, you've ever asked about any of these inner levels, they'll tell you they don't exist, or they'll brush you off, and then you will be blackballed from ever going that far ever again. That's one of the ways they keep spies from entering in, because if you're asking questions, that means that you've been looking into it and you have some ulterior motive to climb. They'd rather come and tap you. Yeah. That helps keep people from infiltrating.
Well, you reminded me with the rings within rings, and I think it was G. Edward Griffith who did a very interesting sort of lecture where I think the title of it was The Rings Within Rings, to talk about the compartmentalization. And so this implies that there is somebody who is very organized and very clever and understands the psychology of men. So it kind of does start you thinking that, well, okay, we always wonder who's at the center of all the circles. Is it the devil, because the devil is so clever? If I heard you right, you were saying that you were in the Scottish Rite, but you since left. What could you tell us maybe that people wouldn't be able to have found out very easily from just doing research? So what can you tell us from personal experience?
Let's see. I don't know. There's so much out there these days. You can almost find anything on the internet,
Well, just speak from your personal experience, because you were saying that, look, and I'm not saying that you have to be from the most exciting and impressive bloodline, but you mentioned there that all these things go hand in hand, that there is an element, I presume, of genetics, or that there's something in one's DNA that is indicative of an ability or a predisposition or an aptitude that could be encouraged, something along those lines.
I can tell you what they think. I can tell you what they think, what they talk about inside the meetings, and, well, not inside the meetings. You're not allowed to talk business or any of that kind of stuff during the meetings. All that takes place afterward. See, that's another insulation technique. That way, if anybody was watching during the meetings, they're not going to hear anything during the meeting. All the nefarious stuff takes place outside the meeting itself. The meeting is just where you encounter these people. Where you actually do the deals is outside there. You don't sully the temple, in other words.
Right.
But
that sounds correct. That sounds legitimate. Yeah.
But Masons don't what they see themselves as, they see that, you remember the whole Pharaoh's magicians and that little battle with the snake, the staff turning to the snake. You remember that from the Bible, correct?
Vaguely, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's in the story of Exodus, like Aaron's staff and all that. Well, that they see themselves as descendants in that lineage, as Pharaoh's magicians. If you go inside a Masonic temple, you will see Egyptian stuff everywhere. That's what they see themselves as, and it goes back to Atlantis, believe it or not. At least that's what they believe. They believe that about 12,000 years ago, roughly 12,500, 12,800 years ago, there was the cataclysm, the flood, and it wiped everything out, and that the remnants of that went to Egypt and to South America, anywhere you find pyramids, basically, and they brought with them knowledge of what was.
Hmm.
And the knowledge of what was, like, I don't know if you know where the word chemistry from, but the original word for Egypt before it was ever called Egypt, it was called chem or chemet or alchem. If
That
you
rings a
know, in the
bell. That
Arab
rings a
dialect.
bell. Yeah. So alchemy is Egypt. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And see, what people like, like magic isn't necessarily all this woo woo stuff that like you see in the movies. Magic really, I think you have to put yourself in the shoes of an age where people didn't understand what we understand. What the average person understands now is far and beyond what the average person, 2,000 years ago, 3,000, 4,000 years ago understood. All that had been lost.
Mm.
So if you put yourself in that situation and now think that you are a master of human psychology, you know how the stars move, you understand like why the sun comes moves the way it does, you understand evaporation, you understand heat transference, you understand electricity, you understand all these different things. You now can control that knowledge and use it to control people.
Hmm.
And this is really what the magicians of the Pharaoh. That's really what they were doing. That's why they were able, God's servants were able to defeat them so easily, is because really what they're doing is just science,
Hmm.
mostly trickery, because they know your psychology better than you do. They can use word games and things to play tricks on you, to make you do what they want you to do. They can use blackmail. These are the true dark arts. The true dark arts are about sleight of hand and trickery. I mean, there
That makes
is
total sense.
also an
Yeah.
esoteric level. Of course, there's an esoteric level, but then you're getting into, blood sacrifices, of animals and worse. It started to get too heavy for me. That's why I had to get out. It was just I guess I'm not evil enough. I guess sometimes they make a mistake
You didn't make the
every
grade
once
of
in a
being
while.
evil enough. Well, let me
Yes.
ask you this, JC. I mean, it's a good opportunity then to ask you about your personal awakening of your own conscience. Maybe I could put it that way, but you could just don't put words in your mouth. What you said there about the way that they understand people's psychology, that seems to be observable. I think people who have become a little bit aware and keep asking questions, we can see that there is an intelligence out there, collective intelligence, and that we are being manipulated
Mm-hmm.
through what we might call propaganda and psychology. But mix it together with a bit of occultism, and it takes on a more sinister type of aesthetic to it. But
Doesn't
what
it?
about then? Yeah, what about so? Tell me about the time, how long ago it was, and what was going through your mind and your life at the time when you said, "Look, I'm on a particular path here. I want to change path," and tell me about that, please.
Well, it's like I was saying, my family got caught up in the whole American Revolution. Then I'm from the South, so we got caught up in the Civil War as well. Like my family we do war. That's like what we've always done. War, policing, stuff like that. That's my family lineage, basically. And,
Hmm.
we got caught up in the Civil War, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
It rings
It's
a
a
bell, but
Templar.
maybe could you explain? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Templar order that it really sprang up and people started hearing about it because of the Civil War. Like the Knights of the Golden Circle, that is Jesse James belonged to it. A lot of prominent Southerners belonged to it. And, it has to do with the Catholic Church. Most people don't realize it, but the Catholic Church are a main funder of the South during the Civil War. They were some of the main instigators behind the Civil War. Them and Great Britain.
So a bit like
But
proxy wars between Russia and the United States in Africa or the Middle East, that this was a proxy war on the North American continent between the Church and Britain.
no, the Church in Britain were trying to destabilize America. Britain has never got over that black eye we gave it.
Right.
And And because if you think about the succession of the monarchy in Britain, it's not a British monarchy. It's a German monarchy that took over for a Scottish monarchy. And you see, over time, the Templars and the Illuminati have infiltrated all these things. Prince Charles, or well, I should say King Charles now he's under their employ. He can't, that's why you see, Mr. Red Shield there poking him in the chest because,
Yeah.
Charles knows, he's my cousin. Charles is my cousin. My ancestor, Joshua Owen, if you look in there's a list of colonists who had royal heritage, that were kin to the monarchy. And my ancestor is, I think, third page, second row. So your second or third page, second row. If you look it up, you'll find it. You'll see Joshua and Rebecca Owen in there. But anyway,
yeah.
they're all caught up in it, and nobody's going to really want to come out, because if they do, the same thing that happened to me and is happening to Kanye West and has happened to so many others will happen to them. They'll be destroyed and maybe killed even.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, are you in fear of your life to some degree?
I'm always watching over my shoulder to some degree, because, there are people that still do want rid of me, but, I'm on the other side of the country now. So I've kind of the people that really want a hold of me and are aware of me are more localized there in the South. So they don't have enough reach to really come all the way out this way and know I'm here or exactly where I'm at to get me.
Good. They'll keep it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have to do something to really put myself on the radar for them to come after me again. They've tried twice, and that's, if you can see it, this nice little missing patch of hair on my head.
Oh.
I've got a scar here, one here, and one across the back of my head that, they gave me.
What did they attack you with?
Oh, well, I've been stabbed twice and I've been shot.
Okay, and the marks on your head are from a knife?
No, the marks on my head are from the ensuing accident thereafter. It was a big thing. It done me in. Technically, it has a big part to do with why I'm Orthodox, actually. I busted, when I got hit in the head, it didn't enter my skull necessarily. What it did was it cracked my skull, took that skin and hair and everything with it, and smashed me into the ground. So, knocked me out, done biscuit.
What was it that hit you?
Oh, it was a 9mm.
Okay. Okay.
Luckily, the shape of the human skull is such that, it's really good at glancing things off.
Yes.
That round shape. But it did crack my skull. It gave me a little bit of brain damage probably, But because of the nature of it, you can't exactly just go to the hospital for certain things like that. So, I had to kind of get fixed up.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you feel that if you went to the hospital that you would be putting yourself in more danger, or that you would have to tell? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yes, if I went to the hospital and tell them, hey, I got shot in the head, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to bring the police there. And being as my grandfather was chief of police and head of the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, which is a Masonic order, I was all to it, which he was dead by this point. He had been long gone, but. Because of that, I was fully aware of what police procedure is. And, as soon as I went to the hospital, they would have called the police. The police would have come there. They would have seen they failed at killing me, and they would have probably tried again, if I guess correctly.
So
on that
Such are
one.
the bonds between them that your grandfather would have been loyal to the order of the police or the Masonic order rather than his own grandson. Is that right?
Like that would be hard to say. Like I said, he was long gone by this point in time, so
Oh, I
you
see.
know
Okay.
he was extremely partial to me. So you know what he would have chose to done is hard to say. If I'd
That's
still had
okay.
his protection, like I probably wouldn't have wound up in the situation I'm in currently.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Uh,
So then, I think I remember you saying that you were, living off grid. I mean, it's as best to, cut as many ties as possible. I think somebody said to you, but you're on the internet, so how are you living off grid? But you're not being
mhm.
ostentatious in the way that you live. I presume that's the way it means, or what you meant.
Yes, pretty
And
much. Like I have the ability to charge phones like with with cranks if
oh,
necessary.
really?
Like you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I have multiple options that I have been working on for quite a while just for this purpose. Like you know, a large part of what caused me to leave. You know, I hadn't got up into any human sacrifice or any of that kind of craziness. I'd like luckily thank God that I'd never got into that. But, you know, if I'd kept going, I have a feeling I probably would have wound up there because I'd
Yeah.
already gotten involved in crime and other kinds of things in order to make money for the order in order to fund the things that they do.
Oh, really?
You
Can you
know,
say what kind of crime, or would you prefer not to?
yeah, like same thing that the U.S. military's into,
Okay.
drugs,
Well,
guns, they're into human trafficking. They're into just about everything you can think of.
and look, were you personally selling, or I mean, not trying to get you to incriminate yourself, and don't answer if it would, but were you transporting it for them under some kind of duress, or selling them because you were told to, or what was it?
Um, my job was like I arranged things between the people that were trying to move it. Well, like most of the people are in jail now. Like the mayor of the town is no longer the mayor. He got busted finally, but like he was the one supplying the drugs actually, and like I was, you know, I was down that chain. So
Okay.
like, you know. I would
So
like a
really,
lot of what I did was more of an enforcement role. Like if you didn't like do like you know, it's kind of what Templars are. You're a soldier to some degree, so you know you make sure things go the way they're supposed to go. You make sure people don't get into places they're not supposed to get into. Whatever you've been assigned to, posted to, depends on your rank.
gotcha. Can you say then? So that puts it in another kind of well, another light that gives us some insight in, when you say that you were a soldier or a street enforcer. So does it really, would it go any way to helping anybody, myself or anybody else that might listen to this on the playback? Um, we're aware that there are nominatively 32 levels plus one, to sort of get you crowned as having completed everything. Can you say what
Uh,
level you got there? Does that apply?
oh well, like I reached a Templar Commander of Knights level. Um,
Okay.
but like, you know, and obviously I was a master mason, et cetera. And I mean, I belonged to a lot of clubs. Like, you know, I had like tacitly dabbled in the OTO and, you know, all these different little things, which basically are, you know, basically a lot of these things are just really a cult leader training. Like, honestly, you know, you see
Gotcha.
people like Jared Leto or, any of these other like people that seem to have started cults, like if you look, they like most all of them have belonged to like the OTO or some of these other little organizations first.
Can you
And
just say again,
honestly, it
what is
uh,
OTO?
OTO it is a group that Aleister Crowley began. It's
What does
a
it stand for?
Ordo Templi Orientis.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of these Hollywood types here in California belong to that little cult there. And, you know, there's that new Burning Man cult, like that all the tech giants belong to. You know, anytime there's Burning Man, like, you know, you'll see all them gathered there doing drugs together, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Zuckerberg and all them, they're all doing ayahuasca and, you know, LSD all the nice CIA imported drugs
Yeah.
that help you
Well,
talk to
see,
demons.
sure. Well, I mean, I guess you're not being sarcastic there. It's legitimate, or that, whatever demons are, and I think you mentioned like, a spirit gets into you, and I know the German word Zeitgeist, and there was all these, a trilogy of movies. It's the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of the times. Whether we look at things through the lens of psychology or religion with demons and spirits, it kind of amounts to the same thing. And I think if you take a lot of drugs, especially hedonistically, it lets something in. But I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to ask you then, especially with California and the tech companies out of Silicon Valley and any others that aren't necessarily in Silicon, I've certainly noticed, sorry, they don't have to be necessarily in Silicon Valley, I mean, but any of the big corporations, there seems to be, to me, a very palpable malevolence going through it, such as, like, I would just call it that most people in corporations are evil. And that's been my experience throughout my working life. But what I
Yeah.
was always trying to figure out was to what extent, and maybe it's just like being, on different rungs in the Freemasons and whatnot. To what extent do you think that, say, the people who go to Burning Man and just, take drugs and have, I used to think there was nothing wrong with it, but have recreational sex and things like that. To what extent do you think that they have an understanding that they're in on the bottom rung of evil, let's say, to not put too fine a point on it?
I don't think most people have any real concept of what evil is other than, what they have arbitrarily decided it is for themselves. It's one of those things, which that's mostly the religion of the modern man, isn't it? Like, the religion of the modern man is science and manifest destiny, and I can do it myself. I don't need you, God. Like, I've got this, under control. Like, I'm going to evolve humanity on my own because, and really it goes back to the Garden of Eden and, Adam and Eve deciding they could decide good and evil for themselves. They can decide what's right and wrong. And, that was the source of the fall in the first place. And really, to me, it's just a recapitulation of that over and over again. We're
I
all
agree.
doing it.
I agree, JC. People do decide for themselves, and I think in a backwards derived fashion, whatever they have done, they think, well, that must be moral now because I did it and I'm me and I'm good. And everybody seems to think of themselves as being good no matter what it is that they do, you know.
So
Um,
mistaken on that one.
yeah. But I guess, and I suppose it's unanswerable. I'll just say, like, from my perspective, I often wondered whether everybody was in on it, whatever it was, apart from me. There was this conspiracy that was from top to bottom, and then I began to wonder whether, okay, fine, the people at the outer rings or layers, they're just kind of useful idiots, and that makes sense. But at some point throughout the management chain, they're aware of their place in the hierarchy and what their common purpose is, or the great work. I suppose
Some
that's the
may,
phrase we must mention.
some may know. I mean, I know some do. Like, when you get up at the very top, there's no real way you couldn't know. And then there people in the middle, there's probably some that do and some that don't. And then people at the bottom, there's kind of less that do and more that don't. And, kind of like that, I would figure. It's compartmentalized as such. You don't really ever get a full picture. You kind of have to piece everything together.
Mm.
But it's one of those things that even if you do know, it's like I was telling you, you'll have attempts on your life. If you're a Mason, then chances are your wife is going to be Eastern Star. And, it's like your family is probably going to be in it and your friends, and they know dirt on you. And I mean, they usually are going to be like the bank managers and the people that run things. So if you run afoul of them, well, you'll wind up in the situation I'm in, or the situation Kanye West is soon to find himself in. If he keeps going, like, he'll have nothing left.
Well, seeing as Kanye, and I think, I'm going to have to find a way either to remove the word, but seeing as we're touching on it again there, he's in such trouble because he's naming the very stridently. So can you tell me, like, what distinctions should be made between Freemasonry and Judaism, or what commonalities is there? Like, if you could sort of
Oh,
maybe
well,
put circles within circles that are going on there. Mm.
that I can clear up a little bit better for a lot of people. I think a lot of Kanye's problem he's just now entering into, like, people are getting Kanye on camera when he's going through what a lot of people have went through long ago, into this waking up process, and I don't think he quite has the words yet. He doesn't understand it well enough to articulate it, you know? But he's in this position he's in. And obviously I think he's being used to some degree to poison the well. But I think from his perspective, he has a platform, and he feels like, he's in a good position to tell everyone. Like, he has this hero God complex thing he's got going on, and he wants to save the day, which I can understand that. That's a human impulse. But when it comes to the Jews, people have to understand that there are, just like Christianity, or so-called Christianity, there are many sects of Judaism. They don't all believe the same thing. There are Jews who are secular and don't believe in religion at all. And then there are 9 different sects who all interpret the religion differently. And the ones we are dealing with are a very, very specific sect. A sect that, they believe in the Talmud, and they can trace their lineage all the way back to the Jews, their enslavement in Babylon. I don't know if you know that story, but, the Jews were captured by the Babylonian king, brought to Babylon, held there for a while, and then his son Cyrus the Great allowed them to return back to Jerusalem. Well, when they did, they brought this Gnostic, Babylonian religion, what we call Kabbalah, with them. Okay. And that is what corrupted, that was the initial corruption of the Israelites in that moment. And, the ones you have Netanyahu and Jared Kushner, let's see, and so many others, they're all the Zionists and and those who are running Jerusalem, they are Ashkenazi, German Jews. They are a sect that believes a certain way, and because of that, they are kind of interconnected with the Templars and the Illuminati and everything in a certain way, because they all have somewhat of an aligned goal. Mm-hmm. You see, they all believe that there is an elect, and there is basically a trash class of human being. And they believe that the trash class either needs to be gotten rid of, enslaved, whatever, and they need to rule. You can see how Israel are treating the Palestinians, that's how they feel about anybody who aren't one of them. Yeah. If you're not a Noahide, a Templar who subscribes to Gnosticism and this Luciferian pact, then, and I mean, people get confused. It's just like when people will say that, Islam and, Orthodox Christianity have the same God. Well, we don't. Just because you use the same word doesn't mean it means the same thing to, different people. Well,
I mean, maybe it's too simplistic to say, but maybe you could say whether it's correct or not in your opinion. It seems that most Jews, from what I've read, follow the Talmud versus the Old Testament. I've read, I think it was something by a guy called Rod Unz, and it was the surprising elements of Judaism you didn't know, and it basically said that their God is Lucifer. Or maybe not Lucifer, but the devil, and that they do rituals hoping to win favor. That's it, is it?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what the Talmud will have them do. The Talmud is basically a collection, like most people don't realize what it is. The Talmud is basically just a collection of writings from different rabbis throughout the centuries, the leaders of this sect. And what they did was they read the Old Testament, the Torah, came up with interpretations for the verses and the laws within the Torah, and then wrote that down. And then those changes can never be edited. They stay forever, and everybody has to follow them or else, right? And, these interpretations are, it's just like with Christianity. You have all kinds of interpretations of Christianity, and some of them are really weird.
Yeah.
And,
well, let me ask you real quick about that, JC. So you're saying that now you're an Orthodox. Is it Christian or Catholic? Like strict by the books? What is it?
Well, yes. Like we call ourselves Orthodox Christians. Technically, we are like what Catholic means is unified, together, like one church. So technically, yes, we are Catholics, but we don't call ourselves that because everyone in the world, as soon as you say Catholic, they think Rome.
Gotcha.
So we call it
like Russian Orthodox or Constantinople Orthodox?
ROCOR. It's the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia. Is what it stands for.
Okay, right. Well, that's perfectly specific. Thank you. And then, so you converted to this, but were you Jewish before, or just regular Christian, or what?
Well, see, the way that kind of works is, I was raised what one would call Baptist, technically.
Okay.
Southern Baptist, but in behind the Southern Baptist thing within Masonry, they'll say to join Masonry, all you have to do is be, monotheistic, believe in one God, right? They say that all you must do is believe in one God. Doesn't really matter which God it is. And it's like, in my opinion, their one God thing is just so that you'll be more apt to worship Lucifer at the end, personally. You'll be already in the mind frame of there's only one, that centralization of power.
Yeah, underhanded like that. As long as you only believe in one God, we don't care who he is. And then eventually they reveal that the one true God is Lucifer or whatever.
Yeah, once it's too late for you to back out, usually, yeah, or once they think it's too late for you to back out, once they feel like you've gotten to a level to where they have enough dirt on you and you will be held in there till the day you die, that's when they'll start telling you the truth, because now they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable that you're not going to, you participated in enough dirty crime and this, that, and the other thing that, if you try to leave, they'll tell on you.
So then I'm guessing then that maybe they at some point in your Masonic what's the word for it, rise through the ranks, you were a master Mason. That does that mean that you got to the mid levels, or you got near to the top level?
Well, you can think of Masonry as just that's the training wheels level.
Uh-huh.
Honestly, once you've reached the Master Mason level, that's when things start to get weird. At least if you're tapped for some of the more esoteric rings of things, there are what they call black lodges, and black lodges are separate lodges that specialize in the esoteric. And you can get into Rosicrucianism, and you can get, it's basically like taking classes almost. Each level is teaching you more stuff, and then you go to another club and you learn more stuff, and you go to another club, you learn more stuff. But it's teaching you to be a black magic magician.
Now, would it be fair to say that the things that they are teaching you do widen your perspectives, enlighten your mind, teach you how to read people? But yeah, okay.
Absolutely. It will give you abilities. It will give you the ability to influence people. You will become, you'll become really good at talking to people and convincing people of things, and using double speak and cryptic, ways of, of just doing everything that, it's just so manipulative. without people actually experiencing it, I don't think I can really impart exactly how well it works or how supernatural it is, like when you actually see it happening. You know,
Would you say it's along the lines of hypnotism and mentalism, or there's a bit more to it than that?
I would say it's along those lines, yes. Like it's one of those things that, like, you know how to work your appearance and, all those things, which that's another thing. Like they're going to pick people who look a certain way for certain things because they realize, like, for instance, beautiful women within the Eastern Star make really good spies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like if you want to know something, like, that's a good way to find it out. We as men tend to talk a lot when we get the feels for, beautiful women,
It's
makes
amazing
them really
how much
good for
power.
that.
Yeah, amazing how much power a good-looking woman has over men.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons they're better at magic than we are.
Oh, right, okay. Well, look, tell me this. Yeah, or did you have any particular situation that you felt that maybe you had been gotten the better of in that regard?
Well, yeah, like, yeah, most certainly. Like, my ex most certainly got the better of me in that regard. I actually thought she cared. She convinced me. But really what it comes down to is, they will put people with you to watch you.
Yeah.
Like, they will put people in your orbit that, are less likely to let you wander, deviate from the overall structure of Masonry and, and just, that life in general.
Just like
it's like you see
the stars.
exactly that.
Yeah.
They fully believe in this maxim of as above, so below, which it is true. Like, and one of the reasons that Masonry does work is because they've stolen a lot of things from actual religion that work. They've stolen these things from other religions, primarily Christianity, and inverted them. And, it's a corrupted methodology. So yes, while it works and while it will make you better at things, it will also make you a worse person.
Well, you've made me think of them as being like religious magpies, and they take what works from one thing or another. They're very clever, they're manipulative, and it's beginning to sound like a case study again in characterizing the guilty party, but it's a group again I'm thinking of. But what I'm going to say is, coming back to Egypt, right? Because I don't want to keep harping on it. I'll say it because I think this can't go on YouTube, right? I don't want to constantly sort of say like it's Judaism or Mystery Babylon, let's say, as Bill Cooper used to say. But what I want to ask you then is, what connection do you think there is between gypsies, right? Is there a connection between gypsies and Egypt? Because they have the same cunning and they're able to manipulate people, take advantage of people. They have very cohesive communities. There's Rome and Gypsies. Are they tied in some way to this kind of Babylonian Talmudic tribe?
I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the Gypsies. They're something that is a very European thing. We don't have really that here. I'm sure there are some Gypsies that live in America, no doubt, but I've never encountered any.
Yeah.
I've just never encountered any. I'm sure that they have some kind of connection to it. Usually any kind of crime ring or gang or whatever are going to be in the employ of the order somehow, usually in the employ of the banks or big investment firms that want, say, property. If you want property, the best way to get it is to drive the property value down. What's the best way to do that? Well, introduce crime to the neighborhood.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's amazing. And we just think, why isn't the government able to do something to stop crime? You'd think they'd want to, but no.
No, because it's helpful. It's useful.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like,
sorry, go ahead.
If you're in the public eye, you can't really just do things yourself. So you have to have that hidden hand that you can use when necessary. It's always been an aspect of power. The shady guy that, the king, the evil king or whoever calls up on and is like, It's like the evil queen in Snow White. She sends the huntsman to go kill Snow White. She doesn't do it herself, right?
Yes. Yeah. Stands to lose
You
nothing. It
know,
is quite amazing how if you have a secret community of people that they can send other people to do their bidding, they mightn't even realize these people they're being used as pawns. So why would you need to fight wars when you can simply manipulate people and set them against each other? It's just amazing.
well, one of the reasons they want to fight wars is because of the population problem. Like, as far as they're concerned, the population is a problem that they constantly have to manage.
Hmm.
And, if you're a person in power, obviously you can see why that is. Like, I mean, the more people you have, the harder they are to control and the more chances that they might turn on you and actually string you up somewhere. Like they're always going to want to keep people destabilized, angry at each other, divide and conquer, and it helps them get more power.
Well,
You know,
I'm going to admit this, JC. I think a lot of people might have some sympathy with them in that they would look at the general population out there and say, well, they call them all cattle, myself included, and I can't
hmm
really blame them in a certain way. And maybe the answer to this is obvious. Why then do they encourage the worst of people with, social welfare incentives? I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear you say it. I know.
hmm
Why do they encourage the worst of people to procreate as fecklessly as possible?
mm. Well, that would come back to the KO ab ordo situation. You're going like to destabilize. You have to burn everything down before you can rebuild it. The phoenix from the ashes, that is, that's one of their, favorite symbols. And, and that's what I was saying about that joint work that sect of Judaism does. And, and what they do, it's the tikkun olam, it's the bring peace to the world and all that kind of stuff. And I guess that circles back around to what you were talking about before. Those at the top really believe that they're doing the right thing. They they believe that human beings are a sickness on the earth, and that I'm reminded of a quote from one of them. I can't quite remember who she was that said it, but I want to say she was part of the CFR and and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, she said, God judges and we destroy.
Mm.
So in a way, like what she was meaning by that is like if you're born like deformed or stupid enough to believe the lies they tell and fall for their tricks and all that, then God has judged you as unworthy, and therefore like it's their job to get rid of you.
Well, yeah, yeah. And maybe they think that God or the devil or whoever is using them as the tools on earth. And, it would be difficult to sort of say, okay, that they are wrong because, it's a bit like the character in The Matrix. Is it Agent Smith who says, Mr. Anderson, I can't stand the stench of all of you, And when I first saw the movie back in 2000, or maybe it was 1999, actually, I thought that Neo was the indisputable hero and that Agent Smith was the bad guy, no question. But since that time, more and more, I've been seeing things from the perspective of Agent Smith as being legitimate. So I can see it from their point of view, and then I have to ask myself, am I only bitter about it because they considered me to be unworthy, and I wouldn't want to join them anyway, a bit like Groucho Marx. I wouldn't want to be one of them if they'd have me,
Well, that's what I tell people all the time. This is a feeling I have too. I tell my wife all the time, I'm still all the time wrestling with things that I know have been brainwashed into my head, and that is one of those feelings I get, especially when you look at the absolute debauchery the left has gotten up to with coming after children and just all of that. It's hard not to start hating people and feeling like well, these people are inferior and it would just be better if they weren't here. But at the end of the day, you can't let yourself start thinking that way. Because for one, when it comes to the elite, like, I tell people this all the time. Why do you think that they would choose you to stay? It's like, are you so sure
Yeah.
you'll make the cut? It's like, do you wear glasses? Do you have an extra toe? Like, is there anything defective about you that they might see as inferior and want to get rid of? Is there anything about your children they might see as defective and want to get rid of? Even if you're not a Christian and you don't believe like I do, then like surely one could see that, right? It's wrong for us to try and judge who is worthy and who is not. It's not our place. It's just not our place.
That's the perfect answer, really, to that, JC. And I've been around these, they're not just religious but philosophical circles, I suppose, because your mind does go around from one aspect to another. You can see when you look at most people that they are cattle, and they deserve to be called goyim because they're just gluttonous. They stuff their faces. They have no self-control. They don't think about tomorrow or anybody else or the wider society. So why should I feel sorry for them or want to save them? And they would stab me in the back just as soon as not, if for any reason or no reason. They would point the finger at Jesus and say, "Oh, they're tempting us and they're corrupting our societies," but it wouldn't be possible unless they were so eminently corruptible. Yep. So rather than I oftentimes in my head have an argument with Jesus saying, or the words of Jesus where he says, "God, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I say they know bloody well what they're doing. And don't forgive them, smite them, punish them, because they're deserving of punishment. So I'm not trying to convince you. I think that, you have the perfect answer there in that none of us are perfect. We know that. I wish that, in fact, I'd been less frivolous. I wish I hadn't been so superficial in my 20s, hedonistic. I wish I had been more driven and purposeful about, where I'm going in life and the kind of character that I want to be. And so that I cannot say that I'm standing on solid ground here if I would judge anybody else, and certainly if I was a member of the Freemasons, it wouldn't matter how well my rise would be. You'd always have to be looking over your shoulder and behind your back. It's the nature of it. And that's just by being in that position, you're not on the right team, if that's the way it is, I guess, Yep. And plus the difficult path. I'll just say this and then ask you another question. I think that a rule of thumb is, if you take the more difficult path, that's far more likely to be the right path, and it's easier to hate them than it is to forgive them, even though I'm not capable of that just yet. So I wanted to ask you, JC, and maybe, you'd like to expand on, I don't know if road to Damascus, change on the road to Damascus is the right terminology for it, but what was the day that you sort of said, I've had enough, I'm on the wrong path here, I'm going to turn around, and then maybe what's your objective now what's your mission for the rest of your life?
Well, like, it really came down to them asking me to do something that, I was morally opposed to. Before I had done things that, I didn't really want to do, but I could kind of rationalize it and all that kind of stuff. But, it kind of came down to a situation where, like, they want you to hurt somebody that hasn't warranted it. And I don't want to put that person on blast or anything like that. But, somebody had gotten themselves in trouble and I happened to know them. And like a whole bunch of other things like that. It wasn't just one thing. It was several things that they were asking me to do that just felt fundamentally wrong to me. And, why, like, I had all of a sudden had this change of heart now, I can't tell you, maybe God's providence. I don't know. But I do know that it had solidified it once I had, like, started getting out and they had turned on me. Once they had turned on me, like, I knew then that, like, I could never be part of it again. Like, they had all lied to me. Nobody was really my friend or, anything like that. It was just business. It was always business.
Yeah.
And, once I had my little accident though, like I had an experience, I suppose. And, I'm not 100% sure what it was, but what it manifested as to me was a second chance. Like, to me, it came to me as a second chance. Like, you got one more shot at this. If you'll act right from now on, then I'll send you back. And you'll get one more shot. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to use my one more shot to do something worthwhile.
Are you telling me that you had I can't think of the term for it, but that you had a death experience? Or
I think they call it an NDE, near death experience. I think is what they call that. And I mean, I suppose that's what it was. Because I'm Orthodox, I'm always skeptical about any kind of visions or things that I might see. It could be pre-list. I could be getting visions from demons for all I know. But for whatever reason, like, it sent me on the path that I eventually became Orthodox and did start getting myself, righted. So I wouldn't say it was a demon. Maybe it was a hallucination. I don't know.
I appreciate your attempt to remain objective. That's rare with sort of ardently religious people. They tend to go whole hog. But I think and I'm going to say this about your choice there, where you sort of, this goes against what you felt innately, internally in your moral compass. That's wrong, and I'm not going to do it. So what you did there was you made a decision not to give up your free will. You remained autonomous, and you didn't give up that light, I think, whereas I think the characteristic of people who join demonic cults is that they give up their own, or maybe any cult, they give up their free will. They just relinquish responsibility for their lives and their decisions, and then they're under the control of these, demonic kind of entities.
Well, I mean, most of them, that's what they preach. I mean, like, even you take a mainstream, or somewhat mainstream, I guess, religion like Hinduism, for example. Well, what does Hinduism tell you to do? It tells you to destroy your ego. Well, your ego is the thing that says, wait a second, I'm better than that. I'm not going to do that. No, thank you. So if you destroy your ego, which in my opinion is impossible, what I think it does actually makes you prideful. Because everyone I've ever met that's taken that route and said, oh, I destroyed my ego, what it ends up being is, I'm enlightened and you're not, and I know and you don't. And it's the same thing that the Freemasons do. It's that same, I'm better than you position, and I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I'm innately better than anyone else. Yeah.
That reminds me of that quote. I think it was Upton Sinclair, and he said, the trouble with the world these days is that there's just such a shortage of modest geniuses. There's so few of us left.
Yeah. But there's so few of us left, right?
Yeah. But I like
he had to throw himself in there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the little, he's joking then. But, I agree. To be able to talk about what is an ego, you'd have to define it. I think it's a bad thing. I think I appreciate that you need to tamp it down, right? Maybe it's not possible to destroy it. But whether it's the ego or the id, these are just labels we affix to things. We probably mean different things or envisage different things, imagine different things. But certainly there is that trap of the person who thinks he's become enlightened. And the moment you say, oh, great, I've achieved enlightenment and wisdom now, is the moment you become so full of yourself that you're like an idiot. You're worse than an idiot who says, listen, I'm stupid and I know nothing, isn't that the Socratean way of the Socrates pretending, I know nothing. Just explain to me like I'm an idiot,
That's exactly how I would explain, submitting to Christ. When you submit to Christ, you're accepting, like, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I cannot do this on my own. It's like I told somebody not too long ago. It's like, I tried doing it my way for, all the way up into my early 20s, and it didn't work. I was quite successful, like, when I was younger, far more than I am now, financially, etc. But I wasn't happy in any way. I wasn't fulfilled, and the people around me didn't actually care about me. So it's one of those things that I would prefer to be poor in most cases. Like, I grew up fairly well off, and it didn't do me any favors.
Yeah,
Taking
I
the
mean,
middle road is always a better option, in my opinion. That
well, yeah,
narrow
I mean,
path up the middle.
yeah, a balance in all things, and everybody wants to be popular when they're a teenager, especially. And I think I was warned by my parents, to not to look for popularity, and that there's a lot of fair weather friends, and I think it's perhaps a journey that we all go through, that you realize that it's not all about just temporary friendships. There's got to be something more solid. There was something
Hmm.
else there that oh yes, about remaining humble. And I remember in Indiana Jones, only the penitent man shall pass. So that's why you have to keep the head down and not be like so proud of yourself all the
Hmm.
time. I guess that's why pride is the worst of the seven deadly sins, because it prevents you from doing any learning if you think you know it all already,
Well,
And
well, I mean, all the other deadly sins and all other sins in general, like if you start tracing them back to the root cause, it'll always come to pride.
mm,
What allows a spouse to cheat? It's because they feel like their pleasure is more important than their partner's feelings,
yeah,
and their marriage and all those other kind of things. What makes a person steal? Well, I feel like, I need that more than you do because I need this, I'm important right now.
yeah.
It always comes back to, that innate pride we have in ourselves, like, and that's what the church helps you do. It helps you tame that. I'm quite a confident and, outspoken type personality. I have a temper, like, all these kind of things that can be good, and if they're directed in the right way.
Okay.
But undirected, it's just like a fire hydrant, just, with a fire hose attached to it, just spraying every which where. And, if something good might come out of it sometimes, more often than not, it's just going to wind up in a mess, you
Well,
know?
I'm thinking of that phrase, and help me out who said it, like, oh, you rock our discipline, right? That's you have to have
Mm,
mental discipline. Who was that guy that said,
mm,
you rock our discipline? But that's it, isn't it? All of these things, whether it's having a temper or not, or anger, if it's directed, if it's controlled, if you're, again, in a way, there's elements to masonry. If you're a master of yourself, of your own domain, it could be useful to channel your
mm,
skills, and be present. But also, being poor humbles us, and that's a lesson. Uh,
mm.
if life goes
Uh,
easy for us, we might not learn anything. Yeah, go ahead, JC.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, like, I don't, like, I guess you could call, like, you could call us poor considering, like, how much, like, liquid cash we have, but, like, I've kind of restructured my life to a point where, you know, that's not the central thing. You don't need it as much.
Hmm.
Like, our living situation has cut down on things to the point where I don't even have a driver's license, my social security card, birth certificate, bank account. Like, I've cut all those things loose. So, and that's really, in my opinion, like what we're faced with. Like, people are going to be faced with the decision here real soon of whether they want to keep using the magic, keep using the technology, or to bow out. Because it brings me back to what Christ said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, and give Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's.
Hmm.
And the fact is, DARPA and the military industrial complex designed the internet. They designed, these social media platforms. They designed all this stuff in order to trap us,
Yeah.
to make you dependent on it, to, like, to make sure that they can monitor everything you say, everything you do. And, we've become so dependent on it that I'm afraid that the majority of people wouldn't even be able to let it go if they wanted to.
Yeah. That's the thing. Every creature comfort, it's a double-edged sword. You get used to it. It's your new standard of living. You feel like you can't do without it then. I have to say, it is
Mm,
fantastic that you and I can converse like this. It was one of the better aspects of the internet that I imagined, but I didn't realize what a
yes.
downside would be to it. Can I ask
Yeah.
you, like, I agree that, the coming out of Babylon, the divesting yourself of the ties that bind, that's the way I see it, all these hooks that they have in us. I think that we have to, even if we're not able to fully divest ourselves of everything, that we gradually, one by one, keep going to try and be as least reliant on their system as possible. So is that your message to people, or can I ask you maybe like to kind of wrap this up maybe a little bit, and perhaps we could talk another time. I thought we were going to talk about,
Sure.
Illuminati type stuff about, the inside
Mhm.
track, but I think this is actually more valuable because I think this is the
Uh,
important thing now these days. Um, I don't think, I think we're in an eye of the storm for the first 5 year plan of the VidCons, basically. So going
hmm
forward, I think people are going to need, whatever you call it, religious, philosophical, or life instruction in general. Is that what your objective is? Is that your message? What do you want people to know now if they would hear this?
Like that is like, that's part and parcel to what my message would be. You know, it's kind of like one of my favorite authors is J.R.R. Tolkien, and one of the reasons Tolkien is so important is I know everybody says, and he himself said he didn't like allegory, but he wrote allegory into that story. Unfortunately for him, you're human and you can't get away from it. So, but in that, you see the part where Boromir tries to use the ring to save Gondor. Well, like what does he learn? He learns that you can't use something that's built by evil for good. It never quite works out the way that you intend it to,
Okay.
you know. And like these cell phones, for instance, you have the Palantir. Well, what did Peter Thiel name like that data collection company that he's got? He named it
Hmm.
Palantir, didn't he?
Yeah.
See, Peter Thiel's favorite author is probably Tolkien too, which is why he named his company Palantir. And remember what the Palantir do. They're seeing stones that let the person using them see whatever they want. But at the
It's a
same time that it looks both ways, right? That black mirror
Yes.
that looks at you as you're looking at it. And
The
I would
abyss
tell
is very
people to
right.
be very aware that as you look into the abyss and you use this magic, and that's what it is. This technology is magic. That's how the elites see it. And I would encourage people to start trying to think of things like they see it, when it comes to technology and things like that, because that tells you what their intention is to do with it.
Mm.
And it's very much their intention that while you're looking at this and it's telling you what they want you to know, like it's also looking into you and telling them other things, where you go, who you hang out with, what you like, what you don't like, where you eat, just everything about you. So, that would be my message is, be more aware. And yes, philosophy is extremely important. We must get our kids out of this indoctrination system we call the public school system and start actually
Mm.
teaching them real useful things like philosophy. Philosophy is something that is being taken out of the schools, and without it, you can't discern true from false. You can't tell when someone's lying to you. You can't spot the logical fallacies. It makes you like a baby out there in the woods on your own and nothing but a diaper. It makes you weak, and that's why they want it cut out. That's why they want rid of religion. That's why they want rid of philosophy. They want rid of that system that teaches people to stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah.
They need you to be in 100% totally dependent on them. You know, I would tell people go out camping, take your kids camping if you have them, your wife, whatever, or if you're by yourself, take some friends. All of you need to go out camping, try to learn to hunt, to fish, to bushcraft things and, do stuff outside this grid just in case. Prepare
Mm.
yourselves, basically. That's what I've been doing for about the past decade. And, just gather as much knowledge as you can and become as self-sufficient as you can. The more you can do for yourself, the more you can do for others.
Absolutely.
And we can eventually get away from this system and help support each other and keep each other afloat. That's the only way we're going to make it through all this. None of us are going to be able to make it by ourselves.
That's a very positive message. I think at times I've been despondent and lost hope, but you're convincing me there that it's possible, that there's a chink of light,
Well, look, because of human beings being the flawed creatures we are, if you look back through history, and the Masons know this, they know that there are cycles to history. Human beings have been here a lot longer than people realize. We've been here millions of years. According to the Freemasonic literature, we've been here about 16 million years, something like that. That's what they say. They say we've been here 16 million years, and in about every million years, there's some kind of catastrophe that sets us back.
Uh-huh.
And their intent this time is to ride that out and not get set back.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why you hear Noah, you've all Noah Harari talking about, the elites will build themselves an ark and all that kind of stuff. They know that the cataclysms have came and went, and they do occasionally, and that the human race does the same thing. Like the tide comes in and out, so do we. We're finite, and we go through these cycles, and we've survived this kind of stuff before. Evil is something that until Judgment Day, human beings will always contend with, because it's part of us. It's part of us all. And anytime anyone or any group starts to slip away from that and starts letting themselves, just go and do whatever, that's another chance for evil to rise. And, left unattended, it will. Left unattended, it always will. The only way to fight back against it is for good people to have children and teach them to be good people.
I guess so. There seems to be a dearth, a paucity of good people teaching their children to be good people, but maybe I'm just being pessimistic. I don't know, though. Are you optimistic?
As a Christian, I kind of always have to be. In my belief, we've already won in the end. These are just little pit stops along the way of us having to learn. Mm-hmm. And people God has a way of using all things to his advantage, even the bad things, maybe sometimes especially the bad things. And, it's like I was telling somebody the other day. Yes, there are a lot of people that are heading, towards the darkness, but also over the past couple of years in the Orthodox Discord, we've had 7,000 new people come over to Orthodoxy. Oh. Just on our one little Discord stream we got, and YouTube network we got going on there, 7,000 at least that came to the Discord inquiring.
Did you want to mention what that Discord is, or is it best to keep it so that only you have?
Oh, it's just the Orthodox Christian Discord. I don't run it or anything. It's just something all of us go to.
Yeah.
I don't have the link handy, but I can get it.
If they search, okay, yeah.
If you search Orthodox Christian Discord, you'll find it. I think it's the only one on there.
Okay.
I haven't found another one.
Well, good enough. And then, did you say that there is is there a YouTube kind of main channel or a connection of channels that you wanted to say? Or?
Well, the main people I would direct folks to would be, I don't have any videos up yet. Working on that, I promise. But it would be Jay Dyer, Jason Burmis, basically all the little ortho bro streamers there, and the truther stream, I guess. But I really am partial to Jason Burmis and Jay. They're good folks and they know what they're talking about. Jason Burmis, he did like Shade, the motion picture. He was involved with Loose Change and all that kind of stuff. Like, he's really on to it. And
I've watched
Whitney
his
Webb is,
documentaries. Yeah, she's great as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it seems to me that Jason Burmis is genuine. He seems to be an authentic person. And I think
that would be my read on it.
Yeah, his movie is Shade the Motion Picture, and as you say, he was a producer or something like that. He was a contributor in some way to the
Loose Change,
Loose Change, yes. And he has 3 other movies that are free to watch, and they're on YouTube in a playlist. And I've watched I think all of them. Maybe there's one I haven't yet.
Yeah, some of his better stuff is now on Rockfin though, because obviously, like, YouTube is not so hot with some things. But yeah,
like conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. About like Twitter, it doesn't like it very much either.
Yeah,
and that's that's even with Elon, like, and that's a whole nother thing that we can get on some other time, I guess, like, as people's hero worship, like, issues. This is why we have the saints. It's like, so you can hero worship, or like at least revere real heroes for real good reasons, rather than looking to Hollywood or people like Elon Musk, who is going to put a chip in your head. Like,
it seems so. And I mean, there is, he was on a podcast, and there's footage of it, and you can see it on YouTube, where he says, we're just going to copy that Chinese application called something like
WeChat.
WeChat. Yeah.
They have WeChat and Alibaba. We already have an Alibaba. We have Amazon. Yeah. So, once Elon creates his X platform, and gets everybody on it, because he's buying everybody's trust back right now. That's what he's doing. He's making concessions. He won't let Alex Jones back, but he'll let, a few people back. He won't let Jason Burmis or the Last American Vagabond back, who actually tell the truth and are objective. The only people he's letting back, if you notice, are either far right or like, the right wing of the right wing that support, the Republican Party, and, maybe some centrists who buy the mainstream narrative a little bit more. But if you're truly objective, like me or Burmis or Ryan with the Last American Vagabond, like, oh no, they're not with that truly objective stuff. That pulls people out of the political 2-party paradigm nonsense.
Right. So it's only within the established political paradigm, the Overton window, that he will allow people in. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll allow you to talk within the ring that they will allow you to talk in, and then that's it. If you go outside that into some area where they're not so comfortable, they'll get rid of you. Yeah. I still don't have a Twitter.
Okay.
Like, I said something, I think I called Tommy Chong a stoner retard, and apparently retard is no longer an acceptable thing to call somebody when you're arguing with them. And, it wasn't something I thought about, like, when I did it, he had me slightly miffed. Which it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing, you grow up and you watch like movies like Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke and all that, and you think they're funny and all these kind of things, and then you meet the person in real life and you find out, oh, you really don't like them.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't meet your heroes, kids. Like, those guys were like, they seem a lot nicer than what they are.
Yeah, I mean, you can be surprised sometimes if people are ordinary, down to earth, not full of pride, don't have their egos all inflated. But a lot of the time, what you think is funny on screen, what you think is entertaining or amazing or fascinating on screen, you would not like in real life.
No.
And unfortunately, they have got us to think that we would like whatever they present on screen to be part of our real lives. I don't want a Blade Runner dystopian future. No.
Even
though it's a great movie.
I mean, and yeah, they bait you with things in those movies that are cool, and then they use the emotional argument. They're like, "Oh, look at this soldier with his leg blown off. We can help him though." It's like,
That's
well,
it.
why is his leg blown off in the first? Nobody asked why is his leg blown off in the first place. Like, should the public feel bad for that, or is that the government's fault?
Yeah.
Is that the bank's fault? Why are we having to fudge with our lives and put devices inside us and stuff? It's like, why are we having to do all this? Why is this not? Nobody asked, why can't we stop this? Nobody asked, why are we even engaging in this behavior? They're so busy asking, can we? I don't think they're thinking of, should we?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The island of Dr. Moreau and all these experiments of human hybrid and animal hybrid. And can we essentially just reverse engineer human DNA and make humans whatever we like? I never thought that you would need to stop and say, hold on, guys, should we develop a moral framework? I thought all that went without saying, but apparently not. And
No.
they know damn well what they're doing, because the pretext is always, we're only doing this to help you. But of course, the Hegelian dialectic is the term now we all know for it. They create the problems so they can bring in the pre-prepared solutions. And
yes,
it's also tiresome now.
Back both horses in the race. Both politicians are in the pocket. They just had, and then they're both going. It's like hailing it's like you're trying to hail a cab, and there's, and two of them stop. You got a blue one and a red one. They're both going to the same place, but like they might take slightly different routes. I mean, does it really matter which cab you take if you're going to the same destination?
That's exactly it, JC.
One's going to get you there just a little bit slower because the other one decided to take the interstate.
Not only does it give us the illusion of choice, but the illusion that there's a free market. There isn't. They got it all sewn up.
That's correct. Like, nothing happens unless they want it to. It's just like that Robin Hood thing. If it was a free market, then the whole GameStop issue wouldn't have happened. GameStop would have took a kick in the teeth, and the public would have got a win. But no, what did they do? Yoink! Let's stop all trading. Oh, nope. They flipped. What they did was they flipped the monopoly board over. They got mad and said, "I'm not playing no more," and just flipped it over, and set everybody back to zero. And everybody knows that's a disingenuous game player. Yeah.
How can you play against an opponent that when he's losing says, "That's it, I'm taking the board away"?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna take it all and I'm going home. That's a spoiled little kid. We all learned when we were like 5 that you don't play with that kid. Like, so why are we still putting up with it?
I think, and I've thought about this analogy, I think the mother or the father, the kid is saying, if you don't continue to play according to my changing rules, my mother or father will come in and they'll force you to. So it's along those lines. They can call force whenever they want.
Yes, that's largely to do with it. And I mean, by doing that, as well as other things, they make sure that their children turn out just like them.
Yeah.
Whereas instead of passing down, we send our kids to public school and let them turn our kids into them too. We do all the little things they tell us to do. We lie to our kids about Santa Claus. We lie to our kids about the Easter Bunny. We lie to our kids about the effects of most drugs. We're like, smoking pot will kill you. I'm not saying it's good to go do drugs, but it's not good to over-exaggerate things either, because it breaks the trust between the parents and the child.
You're right. It's such a tough balance. I'd like children to be able to have a sense of enchantment or wonderment in their early lives, but at the same time, because of the stage of the game that we're in and how much evil is out there, if you do it too long, it keeps children in a state of naivety and it makes them very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was a kid, they didn't tell me that there was a Santa Claus or anything past, like, I think 2.
Oh, really?
And they started telling me the truth because I'd already started to get wise. Apparently, they tell me that, like, I was pretty swift on the uptake when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's what they say. I know I
Well,
didn't
maybe.
like trick or treating or any of that. Like I didn't do the holiday things with the other kids as much.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the kids around me, though, I remember when they found out that there wasn't a Santa Claus, and I remember the sense of betrayal that they imparted when they were talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things that you as a parent, if you want your kid not to lie, it's probably best that you don't let them catch you doing it.
Exactly. You're spot on there, because it does contradict what they're trying to tell you to do, to be good, truthful, and honest. And then you go, but you didn't have
Mm-hmm.
that side of the bargain with me. You didn't keep up your end of the bargain.
Yeah.
I hope with your dog barking there, that doesn't mean, and I don't mean to be trying to frighten you, I hope that doesn't
Oh
mean that
no,
he's trying
she's
to
just a
warn you of anybody.
loudmouth.
Okay.
No, she's just a loudmouth. Like, yeah, she is she's a very baby dog, and she gets all spooky about
Okay.
everything because she's so sheltered.
Okay.
She's with one of us 24/7.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like we're pretty safe here. Like there's a whole house full of people that'd have to come through to get to me first.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you have some friends you can trust there.
Oh yes, yes. Over the years, like I've managed to build up a tight knit little group around myself. I'm doing all right.
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
excellent. I'm really that puts a different color on it. You're not isolated, and you're not lonely.
No, no, far from it. Like I have my other half over here. I have my dog. Like we've got old people, grown people, kids, the whole 9 yards running around here.
Oh, see,
All
okay.
right.
Well, look, I mean, I didn't want to ask you too much personal questions, but it's good then that you have children, and you're already said that you're going to bring them up as best as you can. Nobody can do it
Yeah.
perfectly. And maybe
Oh,
each
well,
individual
ours are
child.
almost grown.
Oh, are they? My God, my
Yeah.
God. So you've seen the
Yeah.
fruits of your or the results of your endeavors already.
Yes, yes, most definitely. Like I don't look it, but I am pushing 40 there.
Are
You
you?
know, yeah. Most people start to think that I'm in. They're like, "How did you do all this stuff? You can't be but
Yeah,
20, 25." It's like, no, 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 no. I'm older than that. Like, would you like to
yeah.
search my head for the gray hairs? Um,
And the bullet tracks.
mm, Yeah, that one is like that one's always a fun conversation when you meet
Yeah,
somebody new and they start to ask you like, what is that, like, what's that scar from? And it's
yeah,
like, well, I got shot in the head. Like the looks you get are rather interesting, I'll give you that.
yeah.
Like they
Because
have a
like, and are
uh,
you okay?
yeah, like most of the time they just assume that, like, especially after they hear some of the stuff I start talking about, they just assume that I'm crazy.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's one
Like,
of the things that I think we all must learn, that people aren't receptive to most of this. They don't want to know. It's like in
no.
the Matrix movie, most people just don't want to know. So I had to learn to, and I still haven't figured out how to do it, but to try and keep my trap shut.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, you
you
cannot
know,
foist this on
that's
people when they're not asking questions.
that's a real problem that, like, I talk to my wife about all the time, is that struggle between, people's free will and the fact that if I want to be like Christ, then that means I have to accept that, even if I care about a person, that they might make choices that will hurt them and that will ultimately, cause me to feel emotional pain to have to watch. But
Hmm.
all I can do is tell them, you know, say what I can say and hope and pray for the best. You
Yeah.
can't make people do things. You have to let them choose. And
Yes. Yeah.
that's one of those things that we're all going to have to deal with. We will have to deal with the fact that, like Christ said, most of humanity is screwed because they choose it.
Yeah.
And we have to be okay with that, even if it's people that we care about.
I've had a feeling, all right, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that there's an instinct in human beings that they want to save people and be the hero, but there's a sort of egocentrism in that, and we might have to let those feelings go.
Yes. We really might. And it's one of those things that you can't save somebody that doesn't want to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if you try to save someone who is trying to, kill themselves by drowning, it's probably just going to drown you too.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to stop. They're going to keep trying until they either do it or they, no longer have the desire to.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to fight that impetus, like you said, that hero impulse where you want to, it's just within you to want to try and, be like Christ and help people. That's how we wound up in this situation, really, with the boop boops and all that other stuff. Like, a lot of people are really convinced that they're doing the right thing and that they're saving people and they're helping. And when you have people convinced of that, boy, do you have a real problem on your hands if that's not the case.
Yeah.
If they're really convinced of it, it's going to be hard to convince them otherwise.
Yeah.
Especially if the truth is as scary as it actually is.
I think that's a huge part of it. The truth is not something that will comfort anybody, so you'll run away from it. It's distressing. So that's a big reason why people don't want to know. There's no profit in it. It doesn't make their lives more comfortable. Why would anybody want to know?
It sure doesn't. Yeah. And I mean, I talked to somebody once. She was a psychologist, and they had been going around to a lot of these truther gatherings and stuff like that, the conspiracy community and whatnot, and other places, and doing surveys on people. And she found that, there's about 17 to 20% of the public have a tendency to where, like me, even if I'm scared of what might be under the rock, I still have to know what is under that rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, if I know that there's something interesting under there, like, the chances of me not lifting that rock are very, very small. And, but other people will quite literally fight you to keep you from lifting it.
Right. Yeah. Yes. They don't want to know, and they don't want you to know.
No, they don't, because you might tell them,
Yeah. So
if you know,
like
then
the
that's
drowning man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the drowning man will attack you.
Yeah, it'll eventually come back around for them, even if they don't look under the rock, if enough people know, eventually it will get back to them and they'll find out anyway.
Yeah.
It's almost like they think that if you don't look at it, it won't happen.
Yes. Ignore it. The ostrich puts the head in the sand.
Yeah. And then, ignoring it sure isn't going to stop it. That's for sure. I mean, at this point, I'm not even sure that really fighting it outright, would even stop it, because this is like an impetus that certain human beings have within them. And like I was saying, like with the people who are destined, just intent on committing suicide, you might not be able to stop them.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of people who are maybe fatalistic is the wrong word, but they're saying, look, this is all part of God's plan. What's going to happen is going to happen. You certainly can't sort of use force to compel people not to hold the idiotic beliefs or political ideologies that they have. So you kind of have to kill them with kindness or something along the lines of what Jesus would do, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I would caution people not to go the evangelical, once saved, always saved route of thinking, this is Jesus' plan, and, we'll just wait for it to happen, and, we'll be the elect, and everybody else will burn in hell, and everything will be fine, right? We don't have to do anything. And I don't take that position. Christ told us we won't know the day or the hour. And, these empire collapsing things, even Nero tried to mark everybody so that they couldn't buy or sell without it. This is something that has happened before. this is just the first time they've had enough technology to get this close to pulling it off.
Right.
So we don't know if this is the end or not. We don't know like any of that. Like all I would say is, yeah, we probably can't stop people from fulfilling their free will and, basically committing suicide if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
But that sure doesn't mean don't prepare and try to keep yourself and yours alive. I would say absolutely, do everything you can to stock up, to survive, to prepare yourself, and to fight back in as much as you can without having to go to violence.
Right.
So, and if violence is used against you, that's a different thing. But, whatever we do, we can't go to violence. And, also soon that the pendulum will swing back the other way. Remember, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The left is being pushed right now, but they won't be pushed this hard forever. You can already see the pendulum starting to swing back towards the middle and maybe back towards the right a little bit. Mm-hmm. Be watching for when the pendulum swings back the other way. Be watching for a lot of these right-wing talking heads to be trying to talk you into, basically retribution against the left. Mm-hmm. They will basically try to pull the same Jedi mind trick on you that they pulled on the left. The left was just protesting Wall Street a few years ago, and then they went from protesting Wall Street to being its number one supporter. Well, how do people think that happens? Well, be watching for them to try to pull that on you. If you're more conservative or, center right leaning, you might want to watch for the right to come out and say, well, we need to ban these leftists and we need to arrest these leftists and we need to do this. We need to be watching for it because they will try it. They need everybody on board. And right now they've got the left on board, but the right is still not quite there.
I think that sounds like very good advice. Because I'll again be honest and I'll say that not only did I expect people I knew, people I encountered, people I thought that were colleagues, friends, even family, who seemed to be so ideologically possessed, and that they should be able to see their own hypocrisy. They should be able to see all of the inconsistencies in what they claim as their belief system. So I feel like that retribution, redress of grievances is very much deserved but necessary, and yet the harder path would be to forgive it all and take the higher path, as infuriating as that would be.
I wouldn't say forgive it all, like at least not the people who perpetrate it. It's one of those things to forgive your neighbor who just said some nasty things and was basically a butthead like through the whole thing, and people that inspired them to do so. The people in power, the people who should be punished are the people in power who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's what constitutes the crime, is the fact that they knew exactly what they were doing and they inspired all these other people to do what they did. Mm-hmm. So, anyone who committed crimes should be persecuted. But when it comes to our neighbors and stuff, like, we have to remember it is just as easy for that shoe to switch to the other foot and for us to start persecuting them back. We all have that. We all have that within us. And, people really better watch for it. I don't tend to agree with Jordan Peterson all the time, but in this sense, we do agree. Like, you really should become familiar with that evil part of yourself because it's in there. And if you're not familiar with it, it's liable to sneak up on you when you're least expecting it and make you do something dumb or just outright evil.
Yeah, I suppose perhaps where I maybe one of my fundamental mental mistakes in trying to think about this whole thing is we've talked about rings and circles and cycles, and that I guess that I want to finally finish it all. I'm tired of the cycles. I guess that and this is a very childish way of putting it, but the left started it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that they say, everything that they claim, we're innocent of, and yet they persecuted us. So I feel like that, if they were just so stupid and easily manipulable, they still deserve to have, like, there's a justice that would be undone if they weren't punished for their part in it, that they could have used their own minds to not be as easily manipulated and influenced. So I'm thinking of France after World War II, where there was an uneasy peace after the Germans were pushed back out of what they called Vichy France, and all the collaborators just kind of went, oh, well, let's all forgive and forget. A bit like a little while ago, like they said about the convids, let's all forgive and forget that we tried to become like essentially Russian crossing guards with you and send you off the gulags, if you didn't take your medicine. So I feel
forgiving is one thing, forgetting is another. I will say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that does it.
Like, it's one of those things. Like, I'm all for forgiving people who didn't commit any major crime against someone else. Just saying some things that hurt some people's feelings and being a dick isn't really that's not really grounds for retribution. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I want to forget any of the stuff they did.
Yeah. Like, these were just not names. What I'm saying is that in Vichy France, there were collaborators with the Germans, regardless of whether the Germans were good or bad. And that if
they were collaborators, then they should be punished.
And then just recently, during the convids, all these people in all walks of life who said, you're not allowed to have a job anymore, you're fired, you can't work here, or you can't come into this establishment because the authorities say you can't, and I'm on the side of good. Those people, even though that they were useful idiots, I don't think that they're sorry, and I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, can you forgive somebody who's not asking for forgiveness? Is that possible? Is that in Jesus' way? I think maybe it is, but I don't know.
It's one of those things that's for me to forgive anyone, they're going to have to at least make an attempt at showing repentance.
Would it be sincere?
I'm not going to forgive somebody. Yeah, like if you're just like, telling me what I want to hear, or, worse, you're just, just out and out, not apologetic whatsoever. You're okay. Yeah. You have evidence in front of your face showing you that you did something wrong, and you're not willing to accept that. Go down with the rest of them then, if that's the way you want to go.
Just to be clear, if the pendulum does swing the other way, and all of a sudden then, the leftists who are like ardent statists, you have to follow the rules, then the pendulum swings the other way, and now they're on the back foot and they're not in the ascendancy anymore. Oh, and now they're very sorry for what they did. Well, wouldn't that be mighty convenient? How would you know if it's sincere or not?
Jesus tells you to look at their fruits, doesn't he?
Yeah.
What people say is all fine and good, but it's what they actually do that, makes the difference. But as I was stating before, I'm not so much for the democratic mob rule either. Like, one of the reasons we're in this position is because, like, if you have a democracy filled with stupid people, then all of your laws and all of the decisions made by said democracy are going to be just as stupid.
Exactly. This is, when you're talking about not forgetting, I would say I haven't forgotten how all you people acted when you just had control over us. There were arbitrary rules. So I would say, if we're going to have a democracy, you guys can't be a part of it. I'm saying that now.
Exactly.
I'm not the ascendancy,
Yeah, I would say suspend voting rights for, and say so, like, we need to remember who all these people are, and remember that they, their opinion is compromised.
Yeah.
They have a compromised opinion, and, because I have put some great thought behind this. It's like I was telling the wife not too awful long ago, we were having this discussion, and I told, I set her up with basically a word problem. I'm like, you have a nation that you rule over, and there's another nation beside you that keeps attacking you, and you don't want to kill them all. You want to, like, kill as little of them as possible. You want them to, like, you just want them to stop attacking you, but they won't. Well, in that situation, you have just a few options. It's like you can kill them all, like down to the last one. You can just leave them be, and they're more than likely going to keep attacking you until you either kill them all or they kill you or accomplish whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. Or you can basically take their weapons away, take their freedom of movement away, and say, look, you're free to live here. You're free to, work here or whatever, but you're not allowed to have weapons. You're not allowed to do certain things because, like, well, look what y'all been doing, And then, in the ancient world, that's pretty much like how they dealt with things. That's why you had indentured servants and slaves most of the time, is because, like, they were prisoners of war. When it comes to the game of nations and stuff like that, like, it puts you in a different kind of decision-making process, because now you're no longer just some dude who's, like, going on his morals and what he, would prefer. Like, now you're a leader who has to be responsible for everybody in this country. So, and you have to make some really tough decisions. And, if you have raiders jumping across the border and killing 200 or 300 people every, couple of weeks or so, this is a problem that's got to be handled. And, the ways of handling it might not be so pretty.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I suppose it just illustrates the difference between, how to have a hypothetical society and then how to actually have a functioning society, and the pragmatism that needs to go along with that.
Mm-hmm. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, man.
Oh,
that's why that
perfect.
Little maxim exists.
Yes, yes. Well, look, it's coming up to 2 hours now, JC. So I think maybe that's a nice little phrase to end things on, because it leaves things, I think, nicely unresolved. And I'm glad that you're not sure on exactly, that we should forgive all these people so readily. And I'm not saying that they need to be persecuted either, but I'm just not quite there yet. I think that Jesus's attitude was, forgive them, Father. They're just too stupid to know any better. I disagree. I think they're capable of knowing better. But anyway, he says, forgive them even if they're not sorry. I think that's Jesus' attitude. I'm not there yet. Maybe I will be in a year or 2 or 5. I don't know if I'm still here. I don't know.
I would have to agree. I mean, as an Orthodox Christian, I know I'm supposed to forgive and all those kind of things, but I'm also still human. And, there's the very real world problems, as you say, of if we just forgive and forget, these people are still running around in society, and, we know what they think, so how do you deal with that?
Because they're only waiting for their next opportunity, and it'll be our fault because we were so naive. We know what their nature is. We know they'll do it again. Yeah. And unfortunately, I'll say as well that, not talking about your children or anything like that, but I think any good parent can have a bad son or a bad daughter, and vice versa.
Yes. Of course,
if you reemerge, yeah, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the mistake we made. I guess I'll leave it at this. Like, you look at what happened after World War II. We had the Nuremberg trials. We persecuted maybe 1% of the Nazis, right? Maybe 10%. Yeah, somewhere in there. And then under Operation Paperclip, we brought them all over here and was like, look, if you'll act like an American and, do the American thing and, work for us, we'll give you a house, a new name, and all this other kind of stuff. And what happened with that? I'm pretty sure their descendants are now, like, trying to take over the world. So, that people should remember that mistake.
I mean, I think it's too simplistic to say that the Nazis were the good guys, but neither could all of those scientists who were just doing whatever the government told them to do, whatever experiments they were doing, and maybe a lot of them just had long left morals behind and were just totally pragmatic about whatever they were told to do, they just needed to do. Were all those guys good guys? I don't think so. Or certainly the decision to sort of say, well, and obviously no matter what way you come down on the side of the war, is that if you, as a business, right, I've seen so many times businesses saying morality is not really a factor here. It's just whatever's profitable. That's what the case was with Paperclip. It's too valuable. They might have done some bad things, but they're too valuable to us. Well, immediately then,
Yep.
even if America or the Allies were the good guys, they became the bad guys, not because of the bad Nazis, but because of the decisions they made, the Allies made.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the Allies were the ones who funded the Nazis in the first place. Like, it was our billionaires and banks that gave him the money. Ford gave him the trucks. Hugo Boss gave him the uniforms. IBM gave him the little computer to, do the codes on the arms of the prisoners. Like, so, all this stuff was contrived in the first place. So,
Yeah. Apparently, it was Grand Pappy Bush. I can't think of his name now, but the father of Prescott, that was it. Yes, who funded the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a conundrum in an enigma. I can't really figure out who's the good guys, who's the bad guys, and who's doing who. I'm going to say that right, because I'm going to have to bleep a few things out here anyway. But you know that phrase,
Yeah, well, it's like I tell people all the time. There are no cowboys in white hats in the room at the moment. The closest you got to that is like maybe the average person, and the average person I would describe in a large part is going to be closer to a gray hat than a black or a white. So, it's nothing is that simple.
Yeah.
I wish it were.
Unfortunately, life isn't black and white, as I kept being told. Or your morality isn't cut and dried as we'd like it to be sometimes.
Nope, it sure isn't.
Well, that's a whole other avenue, and I kind of feel like I better stop it there, because there's another few hours in going down the sort of Annie Jacobson paperclip stuff. She was great, that sort of stuff, But so maybe I want to ask you then, just to wrap it up, what should I call this? Right? I think I'll put it on YouTube. But I think what I'll do is I'll just have the soundtrack, and I'll put some visuals up, Maybe if I have time, I'll put some images that might be appropriate to whatever we're talking about. Otherwise, I'll just put some stock footage or something.
Like if it goes well, then, I'll come back. I don't know. I had fun.
Well, good. That's what I was going to say. So, we'll have another conversation about something else. You have my email address now, and there might be another topic that we'll talk about. But of course, whatever way the conversation goes, it's better that things are organic and natural that way. I think we had a really good discussion here, because anybody could do a sensational thing about ex-Freemason says here's the inside track and the Illuminati, right? Okay, so I'm kind of asking you, that's not really the title, right, to put it, because we've had a conversation. About nature.
This is a more down to earth conversation than what people are used to, I think, with the absolute sensationalism that folks tend to go with these days.
Yeah,
it tickles the algorithm more when you're sensationalist,
Exactly, and I think that we, coming towards near the second or the end of the second hour there. I like the fact that we've left it unresolved, this idea of forgiveness, because I know I'm not there. If I told you everyone just has to forgive their enemies, I would be being disingenuous. I'd be lying, because I don't feel that way right now. But
and that's most people.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to convince you or anybody who might be listening to this that they need to harbor resentment. But equally, I'm sort of saying, I'm not in a position to tell people what to do. But the idea or the discussion that we've had there about that, it's worth considering, I think, for people.
Yeah, I think, I guess my final word on it would be at right now, I'm kind of at forgiveness with conditions.
Yes.
That's kind of where I'm at on it. I can't bring myself just to turn the fate of my children's future, just letting it loose with this bunch of people, capable of screwing it all up again. If we get control of things again and get things stable, then we've got to do something to keep this from happening again.
Yes. In the interest of future generations, I feel like that I must try to bring myself there, but I'd want to see some sincerity and an explanation as to why people acted so abhorrently as they did, and so easily, so quickly. Did they become sort of the willing, useful idiots, jackboots of the tyrants,
Oh, yeah. It gave me whiplash, because even though I'm a Christian and somewhat conservative, I still had friends that were liberal. And, it's one day they were protesting Wall Street, and there were some things that we could agree on and a few things that we didn't. But there were at least some things we could agree on. But now, it's I can't even talk to these people.
Yes.
Something happened.
I can't either. It seems to me that, like Revelation, they were always that way. They were just constrained by what they thought the rules of society were. They were removed, and they revealed their true selves. So I've thought for a long time that there's no way that I can share a society with them ever again. But I have been surprised at the way I was in the past, even though I'm the same person. How I have a slightly different perspective now, so I am reserving final judgment, I guess, as long as I can.
Well, that would be another thing I would caution people against. Understand that a good 65% of the left that we are so angry at right now are children.
Mm-hmm.
They're at most early 20-somethings.
Well, okay. Sorry, I thought you were meant children as in mentally. I'm afraid I know people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are just
oh yes,
yeah.
Oh yes, of course. That's that other 40-45% of people. But I would say that a good chunk of the ones here in California that are pushing things forward, for instance, are they're below 30.
Okay.
Most of the ones driving it are below 30, and the reason you don't hear it you hear more from them is because they're more socially active.
Yes.
People my age, I don't even go on Twitter really, and I'll mess around on YouTube, and I'm doing this interview with you right now. But as far as being as technologically literate and as social as they are, I'm nowhere near that. And it's they haven't had a chance to fully grow out of their arrested development yet. I look at the ones that are below 30, not the ones that are my age. The ones that are mine and your age ought to know better. I'm talking about these below 30, society really has made them childish and, in their minds, just like I used to be. And, just like most people used to be probably. And, I have the piercings, I have tattoos, and all the, I made the mistakes, and these kids, they're making a lot of the same mistakes right now. So, I would say that a lot of them still have a lot of room for growth. A lot of them are actually just mentally ill and being taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And the ones that we should really be mad at are these adults who fully know what the hell's going on and are manipulating these kids and mentally ill people into doing these things.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you there. I think it probably is unreasonable of me to expect people who have no other frame of reference to suddenly become aware of how badly they're behaving when they've never known any other way. And they've been told that they're perfect their whole lives anyway, so why would many of them think?
Why would they? Exactly. Society is condoning it. So, you largely are going to behave, what you feel, how you feel is acceptable.
Yeah.
And if this is acceptable in their friend groups and in their family household and at school and you're the weirdo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're the ones that are strange.
Yeah, that's true enough. If everybody seems to be doing it in every direction they look, why wouldn't they think that that's normal?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, I guess I will let you go. I'm going to have to go and deal with the dinner stuff now. Okay, I didn't realize how late it had gotten.
It shows it's been a good conversation.
I really did enjoy it. And I like you as a person so far. You seem like a really nice guy. And, I would love to have the conversation again and go a little bit deeper in all this.
Yeah, thanks, JC. I appreciate it. And likewise, you seem like a very sincere, genuine person.
I try to be. I wasn't always a good guy, I promise you, but I do try to be these days.
Well, I guess, look, some of the best people have had pasts that they have turned around,
Yeah, I know a bunch of them.
Right. I think there's going to be more to talk about, JC. I think that's pretty
I
clear.
think so too.
I like that we just happened upon each other in a live chat of somebody else's video, and just got.
That is how it goes.
Yeah. Was it Jason Owens or who was it?
I can't remember. I want to say it was one of the ortho streams, but I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah.
why am I blanking that right now?
I think it
It's
was
probably
Jason
because I'm on
Burns.
so many live streams. It
All
might have
right.
been Jason Burmas.
Yeah.
It might have been under Burmas's stream because you don't strike me as much as one of the Ortho Bro people. Like the people in the Ortho Bro streams are like more philosophically minded. We would have
Okay.
probably got off into religion by now if you had came off that stream.
You maybe. I mean, I'm aware of Jason Dyer, but I've not seen too much of his stuff, and I've seen him debating a Muslim, and it was very good.
Yeah.
But
I would
mean, a lot of
recommend
it
you
was
checking out his. I would recommend you checking out his geopolitics stuff, and
okay.
you would probably find that more useful at your present point,
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's
Okay
got a
then.
lot of stuff on that.
Okay, well, I will do. And I think it won't be like I'll send you another email or if you think of a topic that you'd like to talk about or something else. Maybe that's always the way it goes. There's something you wish you had said, something you forgot to say, right? So let
Yeah.
me know.
Well,
We can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure something is going to happen within the next few days that will give me plenty to say.
Okay. Have a think about it during the week. Maybe we'll talk again around the same time next weekend.
All right, sounds good to me.
All right. Cheers for now, JC.
See you, bud.
Cheers.